Hey everyone, welcome back. So I thought today I was going to do a mage video, and specifically I'm going to do the build video for my mage, and I've actually got two builds I want to show you. One build I'm going to show you is better for this kind of stuff where I'm skirmishing away from the group and fighting kind of multiple opponents or doing little 1v1s, and then the other build that I'm going to show you will be probably better suited towards more Zerg busting style. So that's when you're in an OPR and you've got the opposing team and there's like, 10 of them just running around in a clump, just like bullying you. And so as a mage, you can make yourself a little setup where you're kind of like a Zergbuster and you can pump lots of damage into them. So it depends on what style you want to play, and so those are the two builds I'm going to show you. So I think I've been having a bit of a weapon crisis where I've been kind of flip-flopping between bruiser and mage, and I think I've made up my mind where I'm going to go mage. I just think for what I want to be doing, mage has got more of the things I need. Aside from the fact that I've just played mage in MMO for the last 10 years, and I just kind of have this built-in coward mode. Like as soon as someone gets on me and wants to attack me, I just kind of go and I feel more comfortable starting to kite away. So I've kind of got this inbuilt coward mode, but I also just find that mage can 1v1 anything. I feel like bruiser has some hard counters just because of the lack of mobility. Mage doesn't really have any hard counters. Like it's going to have opponents that it struggles with, but in general you can kill everything. Mage has a lot of CC and a lot of mobility, so it can do really good in those 1vx situations. So mage is kind of one of those things that can do well in wars, it can do well in arena, it can do well in OPR, it can do well solo in the open world. I feel like bruiser's that kind of weapon combination that does really, really well if you're in a group, but I'm not really in a group very often. I'm usually by myself off solo, and it just really bugs me that with the bruiser there's just some weapons that you're always going to have like big problems with, and then you come across them in an open world and like, yeah, whereas at least with a mage you can fight everything, so I kind of like that. Okay, anyway, so let's get into the build. Before I get into the build, I just want to do a quick note on mage, maybe a little bit of a setup on your system that will help you aim a lot better. I'm not the best aimer, as you can see from this little fight that I was having. I missed a lot of my shots. This was pre-changes though, but I have systematically lowered down my DPI. So DPI is how sensitive your mouse is to movement. A lower DPI meaning you have to move the mouse more in order to move your character on screen or your aim on screen. So basically a low DPI means that you have to move your mouse quite a long way in order to move the cursor, and it means that your aim improves quite considerably. So on my melee I was going at about 1500 DPI, but I've actually managed to lower my DPI down on my mage to about 600. And one of the advantages of playing a mage is you're always aiming, because with your ice gauntlet and your fire staff you don't really need a high DPI to do that. Those melee, because I've found with melee you kind of need a higher DPI because you need to be able to turn around a lot more quickly. But you can go quite low DPI on the mage because you're always aiming. So I've got my DPI down to 600, and I've found by doing that my aim has increased significantly. So that's good. The other thing I've done is I've zoomed my character in quite a bit, and so by zooming in and not staying maxed out has also really increased my ability to get some of those shots off. So those are some things you can maybe do to help with your ability to hit people. Okay, here we are. So I will go over, I want to show you two builds. The first build I'm going to be showing you is my Skirmishing build. So this is the build that you're going to use when you're not necessarily going to be sticking with the group and you're happy to kind of like go off and have those 1v1s or little 1vx's, those little skirmishes, right? And so this build is built, so the theory around this build is if you can take more damage, then that you're going to be able to dish out more damage. Obviously if you're like dead all the time, then it's hard for you to pump out the damage, right? So this is just going to give you that survivability to stay in the fight and then get those kills, because you're not going to be dying as easily. And what I'm getting damage from, mostly when I'm skirmishing, is if you're on a little 1v1 with some melee dude, it's those snipers or those bow people that just start coming into those fights, those unwanted people that come into those fights when you're not asking for them to, and they just start sniping away at you. Or one of those like sneaky kind of assassin-y hatchet types that just suddenly appear out of nowhere and then just start hitting you back and get you into a stun chain. So the first thing I've done in this build is I've made sure that my thrust resistance and slash resistance is really high, so roughly around 25%, because that takes care of those two big problems. Okay, so with each of the gear, I've got resilience on every single piece. Oh, I should go into the weapons quickly, because I use these weapons for both the sets. So I'm using Keen, Empower, and Fireball Enchanted. This one's kind of obvious because Fireball is your biggest burst damage. You really want to make sure that you land that when you're in a fight. And then because this is on the weapon, it's doing a 58% additional damage. So that's where your kills are going to come from. That's where your burst is coming from. So I use this staff, and then of course Keen helps you to get those big crits. And then the Ice Gauntlet is basically the same thing, except I'm using Unending Thaw because that's a really important stat for the Ice Gauntlet. And so yeah, these weapons won't change between the two builds, but the gear will. The jewelry won't change, so I'll just show you that real quick. Again, I've got thrust protection on here just to add that extra bit of resistance to things like snipers, who are kind of like my big problem. It's got health and refreshing evasion. Then I've got Hardy and Keen Awareness. This just helps me dodge more because I'm wearing light armor, so it allows me to have 3 dodges in a row as opposed to 2 if I didn't have Hardy. And the Keen Awareness adds critical chance, so along with the Keen that you get on both those weapons, it really helps me get those crits off quite a lot. And then I'm using Refreshing Evasion and Regenerating on... and Refreshing Toast, which is, yeah, this is just kind of like the best airing I could pick up. Okay, so in terms of armor, it's going to be all resilience, and then I'm stacking physical evasion. You can also go elemental evasion if you want, but I would go for physical evasion because my biggest problem is like snipers and bows, so that gives me tankability. Now, the other way you could go around this would be to have more... as Shirking Fortification would also work equally well, so it just depends. I guess Shirking Fortification more geared towards if you're fighting, gives you more survivability against melee, whereas the physical evasion is going to give you more survivability against those ranged snipers, so kind of depends on what you're dying to the most, I guess, but I've gone for physical evasion. So here I've stacked Empower and Fireball again. Now you can actually see the difference. Look, if you've got Empower and Fireball on your gear, the damage is 32% additional damage, but on the Fire Staff, it's 58%, so that's the difference. It's a huge difference. But the reason I just put this is because I wanted to get physical evasion and resilience, and then I just saw that there was a headpiece with Empowering Fireball on it. I thought, you know, one day I might get a better staff, that maybe, and then at least I'll have the Fireball thing. So yeah, this is kind of like just sitting there at the moment. I'm sure I will change the head. But the main thing is that it's got physical evasion and resilience. On my medium chest, so I'm all light. Obviously I'm in light armor because that gives me the mobility. With the medium piece I've got Healing Tomb, so I really like Healing Tomb because it helps heal you every time you go into it, and I often use it like if a bow person gets one of those dots on you, you can go into the Entomb and cleanse it off. So I love, you know, the Healing Tomb along with the resilience and the physical evasion. And then with the gloves, I've got Efficient Burnout. I actually quite like Efficient Burnout, not just because it increases your damage, but I've found that since I've been using it, I've not had any mana problems. So I kind of like it for that reason. It's like a little mana boost, and plus resilience. But if you don't use that, then you could just have that as another stack of physical evasion. Then for my legs, again, I've got resilience and physical evasion, but I've also got shirking energy, and that's really, really good because, again, that helps you to get an extra dodge in when you might need it, and I just find that really helpful, especially if you're in a 1vx. So yeah, I've got shirking energy on my light armor piece. And then for my legs, so I couldn't get physical evasion on my feet, so this is kind of just like a filler at the moment. So I got resilience, and I wanted to test out stable incinerate. So I got the stable incinerate perk. So this, you could actually change this to get another physical evasion if you wanted to make yourself even more tanky and resilience. But like I said, you can go Shirking Fort if you'd rather do that. So that's your option. But okay, so and then for the attributes, I go, and this would be the same between both builds. 200 con, 300 intelligence. So the 200 con, you just get that extra armor, so it's really, really helpful. It makes you way more tankier, and if you were to put the extra 50 points into intelligence, it doesn't really increase your damage by that much more, so I'd rather have the tankiness. If you really, really just want to do more damage, go to 150. Any lower than that, and you're going to start getting creamed by those snipers by just when you look out the door. But I would honestly suggest 200 con, 300 intelligence. Okay, so as I mentioned, but I'll just repeat it, this build that I just showed you is all about skirmishing. It's about survivability. It's about not dying. The theory being that if you don't die, then you're able to pump out more damage, right? And you're able to stay in fights for longer. So the next build I want to show you is, this is more of a Zergbuster. So probably you're not going to be getting into too many skirmishes or 1v1s. You're going to be trying to focus on those big groups that have come in, and they're trying to kind of like, you know, say in an OPR, you get those people that queue together, and like you got your healer and your 4 bruisers, for example. You know, you've got like 10 people all clumped up and they're just dominating. This is the kind of build that's going to really be able to pump damage into them. So let me just put that on. Okay, so I think that's everything. Right, so the theory behind this build is it stacks refreshing evasion, right? Still going to have resilience in all my pieces. The weapons haven't changed, and the jewelry hasn't changed. And you remember that on my jewelry I had 2 stacks of refreshing evasion. So refreshing evasion it's actually been nerfed, but I still think it's pretty decent, and it reduces the cooldowns every time you dodge. So if you cast a fireball and you dodge a couple of times, it reduces their cooldown. You have to wait for it to pop back up again. And so the theory behind this build is this sort of train of thought is that, you know, all your defensive abilities, like your burnout, your ice tomb, all that kind of stuff that keeps you alive, will come off cooldown faster, and therefore you're able to use them more and more. And so if you're in a 1vx and you need to create that gap, you know, it's that a burnout's going to come to you sooner, so you're able to use it maybe when otherwise you might have died. So that's the sort of theory behind that. Also, conversely, it pumps out damage more because your big hit, because the mage is very reliant on getting some of its main skills off for burst, because its light attacks and heavy attacks don't hit that hard. It's really important you kind of land in those fireballs. And so, because you're using refreshing evasion, the cooldown on fireball is obviously coming off quicker. Same with ice shower, so you're able to do your big damaging abilities a lot more often, so that it just increases your damage overall. So this is kind of particularly important if you're Zerg busting, because you want to be able to put your fireballs into them as much as you can and get that AoE damage. So with this build, you're going to go refreshing evasion and resilience for the light armor. This is where I get the efficient burnout with the resilience on the chest, and then again another refreshing evasion and resilience on the hand, another refreshing evasion, resilience and healing tomb on the legs, and then I've used pylon burst and another refreshing evasion here. Pylon burst was just a filler. That was the 3rd trait, and it just happened to be pylon burst, and I was like, you know, I'm wanting to use pylon burst ice pylon at some stage to see what it's like, so I thought may as well get some armor with that trait. So this is, so you can see I've got quite a few stacks of refreshing evasion. So if I'm like running around and I cast fireball, so you can see, and then I dodge, you can see it sort of drop down quite quickly. So it's coming off cooldown a lot faster. Okay, so yeah, that's the 2 options for gear, just depending on what you want to do. Now, while we're in the Zerg busting frame of mind, say you have a clump of people just in front of you, right? And you want to, you know, got 5 people in a nice little cluster. I would generally drop my ice shower, fireball, and then pillar of fire. So that's kind of a lot of AoE damage that you're going to put into them that they have to deal with. And so when I'm using my kind of refreshing evasion, I'm just kind of wanting to put damage into those Zergs, I would put on pillar of fire. My skills, I would put on pillar of fire, burnout, and fireball. And then for my ice, I would go ice shower, entombed, and ice storm. Now, what I love about Mage is there's so many skills I do like. Pillar of Fire is actually not my favourite skill. I know what's popular at the moment, which is coming, is that Incinerate, because with stable Incinerate, you actually get grit, which is really helpful for not allowing you to get CC'd while you're trying to get the attack off, and it also does a hell of a lot of damage on Incinerate. So people are using that. I think that's quite good for duels and 1v1s and stuff like that. I just haven't been able to get into it. So I have tried using Incinerate, and I plan on using it more, but I haven't really gotten into using it. Like, I haven't really enjoyed it. I find Pillar of Fire better for clumps, when I'm fighting clumps, and if I'm skirmishing, I actually prefer a flamethrower by far, because the flamethrower I feel like you can use in different situations. Like, the flamethrower is really helpful in 1v1 or skirmishes, because you can kind of get that damage onto them. You can kind of run around a corner. You know, like someone's chasing after you, you can kind of like run around a corner and then get a flamethrower going, and then when they come around, they have to sort of take that damage, you dodge their attack and you're off, and now they've got a burn on them. I like that. But also, if you're Zerg busting, right, and then, you know, rather than doing the Pillar of Fire combo, you can go Ice Storm, Fireball, and then start flamethrowing at them. And then you just really need to be really careful if they're going for an attack on you, that you just dodge backwards. But you can pump a lot of damage into a group with that flamethrower. So, yeah, I like that. I'd say flamethrower is my favorite at the moment. Like, it's probably more of my go-to. But at least I get to choose between Pillar of Fire and Incinerate if I want to. Now, with the ice skills, it's the same sort of thing. Well, actually, it's not quite the same thing. I've been pretty consistent with my ice skills. I tend to use these three. Like I said, I use Ice Storm, Entombed, and Ice Shower. Ice Shower is really good for that CC. Ice Storm is also good for CC, but also for, like, damaging clumps. And then Entombed is just so good when you're in trouble. It allows you to sort of have a place where you just disappear, and then you can just sort of choose when you're going to exit it. You get a little heal from it, and yeah, it's just life-saving, Entombed. So it's good. But what I do want to try soon on my Ice Gauntlet is I actually do want to try those other skills. I want to try Ice Pylon, because I see a lot of people using it. I think it's particularly good in arenas, so I want to try Ice Pylon. I just don't know what I'm going to replace these with. I imagine I definitely want to keep Entombed, so it has to be one of these two. Anyway, so yeah, I want to try Ice Pylon, and I've seen a few people using Wind Chill, and it's supposed to be quite good, apparently, recently or something, so I kind of want to give that a try, but I can't say until I've tried it. But that is one of the cool things about Mage, right, is that just with those two weapons, there's just so many options of what you want to do. Oh, sorry. With Ice Gauntlet, yeah, I really, really want to try Ice Spike. Yeah, this is like, I want to try this kind of, but I definitely want to do this because this adds a lot of burst as well. So if I was to maybe use this with Incinerate, it could be quite lethal. Or use this with Flamethrower, it could be quite good. I think this would be quite good in skirmishes and duels, so I definitely want to give this a go at some point. It's a bit of a fine art trying to land it, but I think once you get your head in, your eye in, and you start landing it, it's big damage. So I definitely want to give that a go. So I think, and then yeah, again with this build, same. I would still go 200 con, 300 strength. I've got, for the gems, I've gone a bit more well-rounded with this build. Kind of roughly, I've done something wrong with this, but I'd go about 10% physical resistance and 10% elemental resistance. But, yeah, that sort of just depends on what you're dying to the most. I was kind of quite down with my, the other setup I had with high fuss resistance and high slash resistance, because those are my two big problems. And then, if you are getting into trouble, so if you have 25% slash resistance, 25% fuss resistance, I find bruisers really easy to kite, so the strike damage doesn't matter so much. And then with elemental resistance, if I come across a mage, I'll just use my gemstone dust. I'll just pop one of them, and then fight the mage, and then I'm not taking much damage from them anyway. So I kind of feel like I've covered everything. Oh, one last thing which I haven't got into, and it's very important. Make sure that with your fire staff you use a flawed gem. Don't use the good ones. The flawed gems double dip, and they actually have done tests on it, and it actually turns out they do. You end up doing, I can't remember how much more damage, but you end up doing more damage with a flawed gem than you do with a normal gem, because of the way it calculates damage, it's kind of like a little messed up, so you actually end up doing more damage. So make sure you put a flawed gem in your fire staff, and you'll find that your damage, and when I did that, my damage increased. I really noticed the damage increase, so that's something you can try. So yes, that is the build. I don't think I've forgotten anything. Anyway, thanks everyone. Another great video. Like I said, I think I'll probably just be playing Mage from now on. Just, yeah, ticks all the boxes. The mobility. I'm just more of a kitey little coward. You know, my motto's always been better to be a live coward than a dead hero, so yeah. But, yeah, the subscriber number's definitely getting close to 500, so it's getting quite exciting, and it's kind of a bit of a milestone for me. Like, I know it's not much compared to most other YouTubers, but for me, like, that's amazing. 500 subscribers is crazy. So, I want to celebrate somehow when I reach 500 subs. So I was kind of thinking, like, maybe I could hold a dueling tournament or something like that, something along those lines, because obviously some of you aren't on the same server as me, so it'd be kind of neat, kind of funsies, to like do something where everyone kind of, I don't know, gets to benefit from it as a little bit of a celebration. So that's what I was thinking. Let me know what you think, but yeah, it's getting exciting. Won't be too far away now, so that's cool. Anyway, thanks everyone who's been commenting. Yeah, especially McDudes, he comments all the time, so kind of like that. Yeah, so keep commenting. Thanks for the help. I'll see you all later.